This is where I've got to do it, huddling up a little bit here. Time for a little bit of a pet talk. Look, we got to admit it. This game is tied. 2 minutes left on the clock. We got the ball. We're driving down the field. We're doing the blocking and everything we need to do.
Understand that, like, a lot of our politicians are over 85 and unstable mentally and just walk around going, I don't know what's happening with things, man. I'm not like weird and angry and volatile and half dead.
Yeah.
And just making policy.
Yeah. You know what's funny is how old is that Gavin Newsom interview? It's got to be 12 years old now, something like that. You know, it's funny because every time I go out and people...
Like a bargain bin magician at a kid's birthday party, Adam Carolla just yanked back Tim Walz's curtain, and what's revealed is wild. Picture a mix of midlife crisis, late night comedy, and political drama. That's exactly what's unfolding. Walz may have seemed like just another politician, but think again. According to Carolla, the evidence is even more satisfying than gas station nachos. This takedown is messier than a politician attempting karaoke, so buckle up and enjoy the show.
Thinking about it all the time. And then I also, and not about the interview per se, but I sort of find myself thinking about stuff. Like, I think about the same thoughts. It seems a little Asperger-y and it's like obsessive or something, but I'm sort of vexed in things in life.
You definitely don't want to miss this. So before we go on, hit like and subscribe. You could almost hear political strategists groaning, clutching their talking points like life jackets on a sinking cruise ship, the moment Adam Carolla decided to shine a light on Tim Walz, a sharp, no-nonsense comedian who smirks and says, yeah, I'm not buying it. After checking out your polished image, that's exactly the person you don't want to face. And that's exactly what happened.
You know, the left is really hoping that Tim Walz will read as a moderate. I think it's because he's old and white, and to that end, he looks moderate. But what do you think of the pick?
I think it's funny that they make proclamations and then try to distance themselves from their own proclamations, you know, which is strange. Like, first off, Kamala Harris is 60 or about to turn 60. The stuff she said when she was in her mid-50s, 55, 56. Is there things you think people change their minds?
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is known for being a well-rounded politician. He's the kind of guy who shows up at the county fair, knows the difference between regular, unleaded, and premium gas, and seems to understand your everyday struggles. But Adam Carolla isn't impressed. To him, Walz's entire act, complete with branding and meticulously staged press conferences, comes across as an overlong comedy routine.
How unbothered we are as a nation, and especially the mainstream media, but just average human beings who just have this sort of conceit where they go, yeah, we'll just keep her away from microphones for another 86 days and maybe this thing will work. And it's like, that's your conceit? The person who's running for president of the United States of America, we can't get their opinions because if they spoke into a microphone, they would torpedo their own campaign. That's not bothersome. And by the way, news outlets, ABC and NBC and New York Times, you should be the most bothered by this because you collect news for a living. It's so weird when they run interference.
Because really, that's exactly how it feels. The performance dragged on longer than anyone expected. Politicians like to give the impression they're just like the rest of us. Walz, with his Midwestern charm, plays the friendly neighbor who waves while mowing the lawn. But when Adam Carolla took a closer look, he realized the neighbor was charging for the wave, the grass was fake, and the mower didn't even work.
I don't know what Trump was talking about. 8 out of 10 of the top state murder rates are in red states, which he was right. That is true.
Right.
But of course, when you go and then look at what the cities are, 9 out of 10 are Democrat, and the only one that's not Democrat just switched to Republican 6 months ago.
Carolla loves spotlighting absurdities that everyone else politely ignores. And with Walz, there was no shortage of material. One of the first things Carolla targeted was the governor's everyman image. Walz likes to present himself as a humble, relatable figure in touch with everyday Americans. The problem, you can't claim that once you have chauffeurs and taxpayer-funded security who treat rush hour traffic like an optional inconvenience. How often has Walz grimaced at a $3 jump in egg prices while waiting in line? How often has he pumped gas and felt the thrill of the numbers ticking up like a slot machine? In the end, despite the pretense, politicians don't truly live it.
He doesn't know the bull he's spewing. It's really wild to see him do that.
Well, all he has is manipulation of numbers and statistics and workarounds. That's all he really has. You know, when you don't have the truth, that's about all you got. It's interesting that he's going to go, sort of try this on the world stage now. We'll see if people are, I don't know if the word is dumb enough, but something enough to buy in.
And that's where the real exposure begins. Carolla didn't need to dig up any hidden scandals. He simply highlighted the stark contrast between the reality of political privilege and the image Walz projects. The gap is both funny and a little disheartening, like a reality TV contestant insisting they're not here for fame while staring straight at the camera every 5 seconds. The public already knows that branding drives politics, but Carolla didn't stop there. He focused on the flaws in Walz's everyman act, pointing out the inconsistencies. Walz loves presenting himself as a working-class champion, yet the economy under his watch hasn't been great. Rising costs, frustrated businesses, and people struggling to make ends meet.
The governor's being mean, and the governor's speaking out on that. Well, maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. Maybe it's time for us to be a little more fierce. The governor's being mean, and the governor's speaking out on that. Well, maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. Maybe it's time for us to be a little more.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with him. Like I would say this. I mean, here's my take. You may disagree with, folks on the right, Tom Cotton, Jim Jordan, okay, some from Rand Paul, disagree. But I don't know, something's wrong with it.
But when politicians talk about inflation, they often act as if it's some imaginary weather pattern rather than a real force affecting people's to pay bills or buy groceries. Carolla tackles this by exposing the detachment in their explanations. Consider this. He takes Walz's long, carefully crafted speech on economic issues and translates it into plain, understandable language. Slogans aside, the critique lands harder than any fact check because it highlights the absurdity. Even when politicians hesitate to admit what they don't know, Carolla's humor cuts through the bluff. The next part got people talking even more. He mocked the pretense. At steakhouse fundraisers, politicians packing on weight sometimes advise others to slim down. Carolla, ever the cynic, called it like it is, like handing out umbrellas during a hurricane. You can pretend to help, but the roof's gone and everyone's still soaked.
Tim Waters or Gavin Newsom or Tim Walz, I go, there's something wrong with them. Like, he doesn't think in a linear, pragmatic, or sort of clear way. I don't think you've seen this one, but my favorite, we pulled it, Dawson, several months ago, but he was digging into Elon. And he was talking about, man, this guy's got money. Man, if I had money, I wouldn't be yelling on Twitter. I'd be out in the street. I'd be handing it out. Come give people a helping hand. That's his version of money.
Yeah.
So Elon Musk, I don't know, you could just take $1 billion and put it in a couple trash bags and just go out in the street and then find those guys in Philly.
Yeah. Homelessness is solved.
The guys in the Philly who were bent over because they were fentanyl, just hand them some cash so they could be successful too.
What made Carolla's takedown so effective was that it wasn't driven by party loyalty. He wasn't trying to lead by example. He was laughing at a politician who thinks carefully scripted speeches and staged photo ops can pass for genuine leadership. That's the power of humor. It sidesteps tribal lines and speaks to what people feel but often can't articulate. You can almost hear Carolla in the background biting into a corn dog at a small town event. Yeah, nothing says relatable like your team spending 3 hours choosing the perfect corn dog vendor for maximum optics. The result? Hilarious. The facade crumbles, memes explode online, critics ramp up, and supporters jump in to defend him. The reactions to Walz were exactly what you'd expect and completely entertaining.
Oh, the team. And boy, do we have the right team. So all gas, no brakes for the next 8 days. Plenty of time to sleep when you're dead. Our time now. We're moving this thing over the next 8 days. An inch at a time, a yard at a time. One door at a time, one phone call at a time. one of those door knocks and one of those interactions, because 1 or 2 extra votes per precinct in the state of Michigan will make Kamala Harris the president of the United States.
Just when you think comedians are only there for laughs, some tried to dismiss Carolla as just a comic. Others argued Walz was being unfairly targeted. But the reaction only proved that Carolla had struck a chord. Defenses ramped up immediately. The speed of the spin machine was telling. The facade toppled in an instant. Commentators scrambled to highlight Carolla's credentials, downplay his critique, and minimize the impact. The broader truth, politics often tries to cast itself as a romantic comedy, but it usually feels more like a poorly written sitcom. And the unlucky lead in this episode, Walz, the heckler in the back, Carolla, made it clear the emperor was unprepared and out of his depth.
I'm a big fan. Speaking of Minnesota, Tim Walz told Dems to be meaner, but then blamed Trump's mean tweets for political violence. Governor Tim Walz attempted to blame political violence, like the targeted shooting of 2 Democratic lawmakers and their spouses in his home state, on mean tweets in an apparent jab at President Donald Trump, despite the fact that he himself called on Democrats to be meaner just a few weeks earlier. We got the video of it.
Voters may have been drawn in because they naturally detect dishonesty. They might need a team of advisors to operate a Walmart self-checkout, yet they can immediately tell when someone in power is pretending to be one of them. They notice when a person tries to appear relatable while living a completely different life. Walz wanted to be the everyman, the approachable governor, the practical employer. All fine. But when was the last time he bought milk without his wallet on autopilot? No political strategy can hide that kind of exposure. Costumes and politics have a way of fraying over time. At first, everyone buys it. The confident swagger, the neighborly smile, and the corny lines that seem ripped straight from a Hallmark card.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is
Gazpacho. Modern day cold soup.
He couldn't even say the
You like a
word right.
vegetarian cold soup or Roundup juice? They're modern day gazpacho people. Now, there's a tomato based who will round up Hasidic juice.
Over time, the cracks start to show. Voters discover that a campaign stylist picked the casual plaid shirt, the backyard cookout was staged for the cameras, and the governor has to perform half a song just to flip a burger. It's like politicians acting shocked at rising prices. Milk is so expensive these days, whoa, as if they hadn't simply walked in with security, snapped a single carton, and left faster than a teen avoiding homework. Carolla's joke is simple. Stop pretending you're the star of a documentary about a reality that isn't yours. That's Walz's problem. When real frustration hides beneath the sarcasm, the humor cuts deeper. People see bills stacking up like junk mail. They don't need another politician telling them everything's fine or offering polished slogans. They need leaders who actually understand what they're facing.
And then we have a cucumber-based gazpacho who will round up some of the Ashkenazi Jews. You know, they don't work on the same juice. The tomato-based gazpacho does not work on the same thing as a cucumber-based gazpacho. But if you like a summer soup, you like a soup during the summer, and chowder's a little too rich for your blood, and you need a Jew rounded up.
Carolla can't help but laugh at the absurdity when Walz slips into his Midwestern dad persona. Nothing screams, "I understand your struggles," quite like discussing financial aid while wearing a suit that probably costs more than most people's rent. Walz's supporters will argue that his intentions are good and his programs well thought out. Maybe they are. Carolla doesn't focus on intentions, he focuses on results. Politicians always try hard and speak eloquently, but the humor comes from the outcomes. Promises meant to help turn into bureaucratic headaches, leaving working families under extra strain. It's like repainting the ceiling to fix a leaky roof. You did something, but the rain keeps falling. And no one cares if you spent half the morning debating whether to hold a press conference by a barn or a small business. People notice the disconnect. Carolla exposes a governor living in a bubble, peeking out just enough to wave, while Walz genuinely believes he's connecting with everyday folks.
Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
This modern day gazpacho shows up in unmarked bowls and with ladles out the justice.
No matter how often you wear it, a flannel shirt can't hide a visible bubble. Carolla also spotlighted hypocrisy. While politicians lecture the public about personal sacrifice, they often dodge it themselves. Walz has pushed the idea that Minnesotans must endure hardships But Carolla flips the script, showing how rarely leaders actually live up to their promises. The consequences are serious. Once authenticity is lost, it's hard to regain. Walz's carefully crafted persona now looks like a cheap prop. His catchphrases lose weight, and he comes across as fake. Carolla didn't just poke fun. He tore down the facade so everyone could see the wiring. And after the trick is revealed, the audience doesn't applaud as loudly. Political pundits scrambled to spin it, downplay Carolla, or protect Walz's credibility, but the spins fell flat. In politics, being ridiculed stings far more than criticism. Criticism can be rebutted, laughter sticks. Once you become a joke, there's no turning back. No matter how hard you polish or rebrand, someone is already circulating a meme of you floundering in another relatable scenario, and the laughter only grows. Tim Walz wasn't the only one exposed. Carolla shattered the whole illusion of political authenticity. And when that illusion disappears, all that remains is the awkward silence of a stage where the performance no longer convinces anyone.